Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Do you have any, well that shut 'em up, stories from working in customer service, part 2? I used to work at a video store, and after a while, I got pretty desensitized to people throwing little hissy fits about late fees. One day, a gentleman tried to rent a movie, and I had to let him know he had accumulated some late fees on his account. Cue standard rant about having returned them on time, blah blah blah. And I'm just going to cut up my membership card when I get home. I reached under the counter and grabbed a pair of scissors, held them out to him and said, "Well, you can do that here if you like." He gave me a venomous look and left the store in a huff, and it felt so good. If he didn't already have a few fines piled up in his account, I'd ask him for his card and cut it myself, cause what the F. And then I'd say, "Well, you wanted to do it, so I helped you," and a nasty smirk at the end. Next time I think he'll pay on time. Two great ones working at KFC in high school. One time, a guy asked for a lot of hot sauce with his chicken, so I put 2 big handfuls in his bag, and he's like, "Come on man, I need more than that." So I grabbed a large plastic bag and dumped the entire set pan of packets into the bag. Probably like 200 packets. He looked like he hit the lottery and thanked me. Another time, a guy came inside after going through the drive-thru and complained that we gave him the wrong style chicken. It was a 6-piece meal he ordered. I told him to wait a minute, and I came back with a 24-piece meal and a ton of side dishes and chocolate cake. 4 large bags of food. He looked at me like there's no way that is for me. I set it all down on the counter and said, "I think this will make up for it." He laughed and said, "I don't even know what to do with all this." I laughed and walked away. I hated working there, so I always did ridiculous stuff to make up for people's mistakes. I always rewarded the people that were nice when they complained. It made my day better. Oh, how I wish I'd been that customer who'd been so lucky. It would have been cool to come in and complain, kindly, and get a bunch of free food in return. I think if you got fired for that, the reason would be too generous with customers. And that sounds like a really fun thing. Working at a shipping store, a customer tried to drop off a package to be shipped back to Clearwire, an internet company. He had the box wrapped in shipping paper and twine. Instead of a prepaid shipping label, he had printed out the directions on how to obtain the shipping label. I tried to explain to him that he needed to go back to his email, click on this link, me pointing at the directions he printed out, and print the shipping label. He was adamant that he did everything correctly and kept saying he was going to leave the package there and that it was our problem. My boss, hearing this, comes from the back and explains that if the customer leaves the package, my boss will throw it out the door. The guy turns around, leaves the package, and says again, "Not my problem." My boss, true to his word, follows him and throws the package towards the customer. The package bounces a few times on the sidewalk right past the C-stomer, my term for S-customers, and the guy keeps on walking. The package stayed outside for 15 minutes in heavy rain before my boss relents and took the package inside. The package was still under a counter 4 months later when I left the job. Did this company not care that the package had never been shipped for 4 months? That's weird. Or it could be that after this whole situation, the guy proceeded to bee out the phone rep at the ISP. After that, they charged him for failing to send his package back. I can just hear him yelling, "I sent this ass back exactly like you told me to!" We had a building where I ran a family sewing factory with a small store attached which my mom ran. One day, a guy comes in to deliver some rolls of fabric, and this woman decides to park in the middle of the lot. Not even a parking spot. She just turned off her car wherever and got out to go shopping elsewhere. The trucker had to leave, so I had the car towed so he could get out and back on the road. The next day, I hear a very loud voice demanding to see a manager. He shoves a ticket in my office manager's face and says, "You're paying for this." I walk in and ask what the problem is. I'm 6'6". He tries to get all up in my face and asks sarcastically, "Who's paying this ticket?" I got loud and replied, You mean where I had to tow a car because they were too cheap to put a quarter in a parking meter on the street and parked illegally in the middle of my lot? Got within 2 inches of his face. You are. Get out now, or I'll throw you out on your A, Mr. S for brains. I was a good 10 inches bigger than he was. He left. Then I called the cops and made a complaint against him for threatening behavior to my employees, just in case he tried anything funny. You're a bad AOP. Serves them right. Next time they'll know where to park. Also, you could have accidentally scratched the car just a little bit so it wouldn't be noticeable at first, like a petty revenge. And judging from the story, the woman parked, but to deal with the ticket, apparently her husband came or something like that. Peed off people, if you screwed up, then go solve your problems yourself. Why do you send someone else instead of yourself? My roommate and I decided to go grab some Subway before we went out one Friday night. One of them is half Ecuadorian and the Subway employee were both Hispanic. While I was in the process of ordering my sandwich, the two workers were speaking to each other in Spanish. When it was my friend's turn, he ordered in Spanish, which I thought was simply a gesture. I couldn't figure out why both employees looked like ghosts and stammered their way through the entire ordering process. When I got back in the car, my friend said that the two workers said, "Look at this effing pretty boy pretending to be cultured. What an F, he doesn't even know the language." At which point, my friend decided to place his entire order in Spanish and thank them at the end of the transaction. I tip my hat to you, friend. It's always amusing to see the look on faces of people who smugly assumed you didn't understand them, and then when you put them in their place with a few phrases in the same language, they cringe at everything they said. And then they're quick to ask for forgiveness. I was working in food service at a cash register. A customer came up and placed an order. I rang it up. She wasn't happy with how much it cost. She started whining and being a real bee. My coworker came up and stood next to me, looked over what I did, and just kinda stood there polishing a counter. She squawked, "Get me your manager." I say, "Okay, sure, but ma'am, this is the correct price." Coworker standing next to me is actually the manager. He looks at the woman and goes, "Yep," and continues polishing the counter. "But what? Okay, fine," shouts the woman and walks away. The two of us crack up laughing. How annoying people like that are. There should be a basic civility test people have to take before they're allowed to enter stores and eateries. If they fail, they gotta do all their business online and are forbidden from talking to a real person over the phone. It would be a perfect world, but actually boring. A well-dressed business passenger bought a plane ticket on Continental from Indianapolis to Manchester. There were no direct flights, so he would have to connect in EWR, Newark, New Jersey. After arriving in EWR, he strolls over to the Manchester gate and sees a small 50-pax regional jet parked outside. He thinks nothing of it and boards the airplane a while later. After taking his seat and just prior to the boarding door being closed, the flight attendant makes an announcement. "Welcome aboard flight number service to Manchester, New Hampshire." This guy goes completely ape-ass. He starts scrambling to get his things and get off the plane, all while yelling at the flight attendant, gate agent, pilots, and other passengers. He was trying to go to Manchester in the UK, airport code of man, and he bought a ticket for MHT. The gate agent was getting completely verbally abused by the guy at the podium as she tried to rebook him to the proper destination. She took it all in stride and was really trying to help the guy, even though he was being a complete D and going on and on about how it was a mistake in the computer. And then she saw how much he paid for the ticket. Her exact words were, "You only paid $300 for your ticket, and you really thought that was going to get you to England." He was quiet after that. Departure taxes are about $150 alone in England. First of all, I mean, how does he just get on the plane? How about check his ticket when he gets on the plane? How do they even let him on there? Secondly, is he really so dumb that he thinks you can buy a ticket for $300 if you're effing flying to another GD continent? Of course, it's this stupid computer's fault, not his stupid brain. I used to work in the main office for a large chain of furniture stores in the UK. I worked in the evenings, phoning customers to let them know their furniture was in and arrange a delivery date. One night, I phoned and asked for Mr. or Mrs. something or other. The guy on the phone starts ranting to me about people phoning up his elderly parents trying to sell things. He went on and on and on and wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. I think he may have even used the toilet while he was ranting at me. When he finally wound down, I said, "Are you finished now, sir? This is blank furniture, and I'm phoning to arrange a delivery date for your parents' new 3-piece suite." Yep, shut him up completely. Not really relevant, but another funny story from that job. After we started getting really busy in the transport department, they decided to hire someone to help me with the phone calls. It was our first week, and we were sitting there making calls one evening. I was leaving a message on an answering machine. I screwed up the message, so I phoned back and tried again. When I got off the phone, my colleague was cracking up. She said to me, "Do you realize you changed your voice when you left the second message? You're the only American person here. Do you really think they are going to think it was someone different?" At that point, we were crying with laughter and could hardly make a phone call for the rest of the night because every time we looked at each other, we lost it again. I always enjoy stories of people realizing that they're jerks to people just doing their job. Unfortunately, you only feel bad about the mistaken identity, not your reaction to be a jerk. You are why I will never do sales again. Unless it's to not starve. When I worked electronics at Toys R Us, I had a pretty loud and angry mother try to return a Nintendo Wii claiming it wouldn't read any discs. I plugged it in at the service desk for her, hit eject, and of course, the disc came out upside down. Stupid woman. To be fair, it's not entirely obvious to everyone which direction the discs need to face in a Wii. That said, she could have at least tried it both ways. But yes, stupid woman. I've worked restaurants and retail for years. I've seen people act and say just about everything. Now that I'm in IT, I've had a few of those moments that simply take the cake. I'll give you one from my restaurant days and one from IT. When I was a server, I was that server that everyone claims they would always be if they did one day become a server in a restaurant. I filled up glasses when they needed to be refilled without asking. I brought out a bowl of lemons if you asked for lemons. If you wanted extra ice, you got a whole extra glass full of ice. I was even OCD enough to write down every order, even though I could easily memorize it and get it right. One particularly busy night, I'm working a party of about 20 people. It's a Friday night and the kitchen is slammed. Everything was going smooth, I thought, until I bring out the drinks and salads. There is one B that starts off saying I didn't bring her anything right, wrong dressing, drink had a lemon, too much ice, etc. I play the gracious and apologetic server, correcting the issue despite knowing she is wrong. The meal comes out and she explodes into a tirade of expletives about how I can't seem to do anything right and what an F-up I am. I proceed to congratulate her on the fine example she is setting for the kids at the table on how to treat another human being and what classy language she was using. I then proceeded to show her where I wrote down everything she asked for, the type of salad, the dressing she wanted, how she wanted it on the side, pulled the straw I gave her from under her bread plate and told her that I did give her one, and how when she heard that her sister had ordered another dish and she told her sister that she wanted that dish instead, she maybe should have simply asked for me to change the order instead of trying to play it off as if I was truly an F-up as she claimed. And maybe next time she would do a better job of making sure the server was not in earshot when she says something like that. I then told her that I would go and have the kitchen fix the meal she really wanted instead of the one she ordered, and that it would take about 10 minutes before it was ready. Needless to say, the whole table was quiet except for her father, who simply said, "Honey, it's about time someone called you out on your BS." The old man gave me a $100 tip when he paid for the meal, strong handshake, and a thanks. One from IT happened with a problem user we have. We are currently short-staffed, so in addition to traveling to site, we also have to take calls that are forwarded from the desk phones to our cell phones. This Dr. D nozzle has double doctorates from Vanderbilt University and the worst case of entitlement that I have ever seen. This one fine day, we were at his location unbeknownst to him, and he calls in ranting that he can't seem to do anything he needs to and that everything is running really slowly. I start asking some basic troubleshooting questions, to which he cuts me off, starts yelling that he is not some effing idiot and how he has 2 doctorates. I then tell him that I didn't quite catch any of that and could he repeat it again? Only this time, I have the phone up to a Cisco phone that I dialed the overhead PA system in his building on. The only words he got out was, "I have 2 effing doctorates, D-head." Needless to say, he realized that he had just made the second mistake. The first is never F with the people who can F with your food. The second is never F with the people who can F with you. So I walk down to his office and walk in. There he sits, red-faced and embarrassed. I take a look at his PC, and lo and behold, he is running Pandora Radio, watching a video on YouTube, and downloaded God knows what. I kill all 3, and he is able to do what he needs to do on the work-related sites he needs to. I then warned him that next time, he needs to quit D'ing around on websites when he's here to work. Later that day, I blocked Pandora Radio and YouTube and set it so that you cannot download files unless you have a login to the proxy server. Needless to say, he doesn't call in with issues all that often. I can't imagine why. Regarding your work as a server, first of all, it was cool. Secondly, it really takes talent to call this woman an idiot in such a veiled way without ever insulting her. Apparently, she's so sick of her relative's darling behavior that no one supports her, and even the other way around, they are on your side. It would have been funny to see her twisted face. Starts yelling that he is not some effing idiot and how he has 2 doctorates. This just further demonstrates his stupidity and how nice to know you put such a man in his place, all with a few phrases and a few simple actions. Needless to say, he doesn't call in with issues all that often. I can't imagine why. Of course, because he has 2 effing doctorates and he's an important P to call in with issues again. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.